So let me begin by giving my greetings. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states, India and Sri Lanka. Good evening to our friends in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Nice to see you. So I've recently been on a bit of a pilgrimage and wanted to talk a little bit about that. I've said in some recent talks that my practice is 85% Theravada, 15% has some Mahayana influences, and some of you will be scratching your heads and thinking, Ajahn, actually, you do an awful lot of pilgrimages for someone with a 15% interest in the Mahayana. But it's true. It is true what I'm saying, that some of these things are more about when particular karmas ripen. In recent years, I've been invited to places like Bhutan and the Holy Mountains. So that's been my opportunity. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why go on pilgrimage, like in terms of making it relevant to any Buddhist practitioner. I wanted to talk about some of the activities or some of the things we practice with on pilgrimage, qualities that we develop, types of merits that we produce, and how those qualities can help us towards our liberation, how that merit can also fuel our efforts. So whenever we go on a pilgrimage to a holy place in the Buddhist sense of the word, it's for this reason. It's to accumulate potent supportive merits and blessings, and also to take a period of time out of one's ordinary life and cultivate different qualities, or perhaps work on a quality more than one normally does. And so thinking of my own teachers this lifetime, Ajahn Sumedho, before he met Ajahn Chah, did a long kuti retreat. I think it was in Nong Khai. And Ajahn Pasano had a period of practice in the jungle on the border of Burma at a place called Dawdam. Ajahn Jayasaro, he had a period of practice in a cave. I think it was about a year. And so people do take time out of their ordinary lifestyle, even monks who have a supportive lifestyle, but they take time out of it to do some things which might be a bit more intense for the sake of being able to work on developing more samadhi, more insight, more seclusion. But these are also often accompanied by a period of searching, like Luang Por Pasano wandered until he found the suitable place to practice on Tudong, as it's called in Thai. Monks go wandering and find a quiet, suitable place to practice, or a suitable teacher to practice with historically. Luang Por Chah himself had some doubts about his practice. He had good teachers, Luang Por Tongrat, Luang Por Kinari, but he had some doubts. So he wanted to discuss his doubts with Luang Por Man. He heard that Luang Por Man was staying in Bangkok. So he walked all the way from Ubon Ratchathani to Bangkok. It's about 700 kilometers. When he got there, he found out that Luang Por Man had returned to Ubon. So he walked back to Ubon, another 700 kilometers. And he did eventually find Luang Por Man. But what's interesting about this, I think one of the particular value, if we can consider this, is like, suppose you're Luang Por Chah and you have your doubt and you've heard good things about Luang Por Man and you want to go and visit Luang Por Man, and you walk all the way to Bangkok, he's not there. You walk all the way back to Ubon and then you go and find him. By the time you find him, you're going to be really appreciative that he's there, that you've met him, that you have the opportunity to ask your question. This is something I think modern people, we have a bit of a challenge because we can listen to any one of our favorite teachers on YouTube whenever we want to. Sometimes we might, it's a double-edged sword. You have good quality Dhamma whenever you like, but does it touch you? Does it affect your mind as deeply as if you had to work harder to hear it? That's up to you to consider. But for myself, taking periods of time where I put forth more effort. I'm pretty diligent. I do my morning, my afternoon, my evening practice every day, most days, unless I'm sick or traveling. I've also learned ways to practice while traveling. But it's good to take periods of intensive retreat. I usually take 2 periods of retreat a year, a period in my kuti during the rainy season retreat and a period in India. And then in the past, I did 7 retreats in the jungle on the border of Burma as a young monk in the first 10 years, 2 or 3 months. And after my 10th Pansara, I've spent more time in India, as you know, meditating, working on the ability to meditate for longer sessions and more weeks. So in the most recent pilgrimage that I did, I wanted to work with some things that I was scared of. So forest monks in the past, they would go and practice with the Thais. They would go and practice in charnel grounds. So many of them very scared of ghosts. Or they would go and practice where they knew tigers were, because they understood that awareness of death. You know, if you're living in a forest that really does have Bengal tigers, very big tigers, then you know when you fall asleep that you might not see the next day. You can feel, I have spent time in these jungles where there are these large animals, and you can feel the presence of these animals, and it's kind of primal. There's a part of the mind that knows that, yeah, I might not see tomorrow. And sometimes living in places where people can get cerebral malaria, I walked several of my friends out of the jungle with malaria. There's also that awareness that illness could affect one. And so practicing in the nature with more palpable, it's just much more kind of in your face that you might die or get sick. That brings a certain, it's easier to be in the present moment when one truly is mindful that today might be the last day. Then when we really take that on, that's the truth all the time, but we forget. So when we go to places that sharpen that awareness, then it's not so surprising that people find it easier to be with their meditation object and develop more samadhi. Particularly with the fear of ghosts, when people, if they let go of their mindfulness and they start thinking about ghosts, it's just terrifying, and their mind becomes wretchedly miserable. So they find it easier to be with Buddha, 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 or may I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be happy, or do a lot of chanting. So people use these kind of things as a way to be more consistently with their meditation object. Being more consistently with one's meditation object, which is the point of pilgrimages, intensive practice, retreats, means that we're not feeding the 5 hindrances as much. When we don't feed the 5 hindrances, we don't feed the ignorance and delusion that are behind them. As we don't feed ignorance and delusion, and we feed mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, not so surprising, the mind gets brighter. The likelihood to experience insight increases. So one of the things that Ajahn Bhikkhu is scared of is cold weather. And for those of you who live in cold places, you go, what? Who cares, you know? Yeah, when you have a heated home and a down jacket and a heated car and the place where you go is heated. That's not the kind of cold I'm scared of. I mean, being outside in the cold, that's the kind of cold I'm scared of. And to help, I'm looking at these faces of many people who live in cold countries, and they're kind of like, they're not going to be impressed. I don't also experience -1. Where I am, it's -20. Yeah, whatever. So stretch your imagination. Imagine you people from cold countries, have to come to Thailand in the hot season in April, and you have to sit with 38 degrees all day. How do you feel about that? Okay, if you understand that what we get used to is comfortable. So I'm accustomed to between 25 and 35. That's my comfort zone, Celsius. And so for me to go where I went, where we experienced -2 to 1 degrees, was intensive practice. As well as that, the staircases in China are a phenomenon. I would like you to imagine a 1,000 step granite staircase only going up. And I'd like you to imagine that it's 1 degree. And I'd like you to imagine that the stone is covered in ice. And you have to climb this, I don't know, 1 or 2 mile long staircase. Also, we have to add to this that we're at high elevation. So you're walking from 2,400 to 3,100 meters. And so there's less oxygen. Add to this that there's about 5 rows of Chinese tourists walking in the opposite direction. And you have to work with other phenomena, at least I do, because I'm a head and shoulders taller than them. And for whatever reason, most of them are wearing a black down jacket. And here I was with my ochre browns and my yellow fluffy hat. And so there was a combination of, whoa, wow, and just bursting out laughing at me. Yeah, they laughed at me, some people. So that's another interesting phenomenon to work with, as well as the cold and the altitude and the big, big, big staircase. So one of the advantages of having to walk up a big staircase, this is another thing that people who exercise more won't appreciate, is those of us who are Thai, I'm Thai, as well as Australian, Thai people abhor exercise, because the problem with exercising in Thailand is you break a sweat and you become itchy all over. So we hate that. The heat's already uncomfortable, but if you become itchy and sweaty and smelly and sticky as well, oh, it's terrible. So Thais will do anything to avoid walking upstairs. Normally, Thai people in this day and age, unless they have to, will take their air-conditioned car to the shopping mall or have their food delivered to their home and avoid exercise at all costs. I'm not recommending this. I think this is terrible, but I'm just telling you the way it is. Now, the farmers, of course, they have no choice. They get up and they exercise a lot. And I have a lot of appreciation, compassion for the farmers of Thailand and the laborers. But the city folk will avoid exercise at all costs. Unless it's walking around in an air-conditioned shopping mall. They can do that for hours. And they do. So when you the place we went to was Sun, which is there are 4 holy mountains in China identified with celestial bodhisattvas: Sun, Jiuhuo Sun, Wutai Sun, and Puto Sun. And it was about 18 months ago. It would have been 2 years ago, a little bit less than 2 years ago. I was at Ajahn monastery, and I was thinking, because as you will have noticed, we always seem to be on the brink of a big war or a big disaster the last few years. And I remember thinking, if the world kind of falls apart and travel isn't possible, or the economy isn't functioning, and if I'm stuck in my monastery, or if we're dying in a nuclear winter, I would regret having not gone to Wutai San. That is a place that I would like to go. And I was having that thought in the kuti where I was staying at Ajahn monastery. And I got a text message from a student in Singapore, like about 5 seconds after having that thought. And the text message said, Ajahn, I've got some meetings in China, and I was thinking of inviting you to one of the holy mountains. How would you like to go to my son? My student Cliff asked. And I wrote back to him and I said, I was just thinking that I want to go to Wutai-san. And he said, well, that won't work because the place where I'm having meetings is next to my son. So how about we go to my son first? And also we can try to go to Jiuhua-san. So my son is associated with Samantabhadra. Jiuhua-san is associated with Siddhigarbha. And then it occurred to me that, hey, I might actually be able to fulfill the 4 holy mountains pilgrimage this lifetime, because here I am being offered the opportunity to go to 2 of them, and I'd already been to one of them, and that would leave only Wutai remaining. So, okay, I accepted the invitation. So I had been before, and I have to confess something. I think it was the altitude. Like, I think before I came back to my son, this was the second trip, I was telling you that I was going to have to climb a 3,500 step staircase. And I regret telling you that because it wasn't true. And some people might have thought, oh, I'm never going there. That's too hard. It turns out that it's 3,500 steps if you don't take the chairlift. And so what must have happened is my mind, affected by altitude last time, remembered counting those steps on the way down because we didn't take the chairlift on the way down. But if you take the chairlift on the way up, it is only 1,000 stairs. So, which is doable for a lot of people. But the other challenge in my son is it turns out that my son only has between 20 or 30 sunny days a year. So it's nearly always misty and often icy and snowy. So anyway, I did go. And I basically had the impression that it's too hard and I won't go back again. But I'm glad I went. And then another student said to me, well, he wants to go and I've been, would I mind going with him? And I thought about it and I'm like, yeah. Because whenever we come up with that, it's too hard, I don't like it. That's an interesting thing to actually look at. Okay. Where we perceive our limitations, where we perceive things as being too hard. And it's like, well, if it is too hard, how come you survived it? I asked myself. Obviously, it's not too hard. It just means there was dukkha vedana, unpleasant feelings that you don't like that you had to work with. And I'm like, well, why don't you go back and work with them again? So I did agree to go back. And what was very interesting, I'll show you some photos soon. What was very interesting, and this is something I wanted to talk about, is like, if we can bring a quality of faith and devotion and commitment to our practice, then, because my experience on this recent trip was that it was hard, that I made a vow when we got to the top. There's a chetty at the top, and a circumambulation around the chetty is about 150 meters, and I did make a vow to do 108 circumambulations. And because it was icy and because a lot of people, that meant about 2.5 times 3, 7.5, 8.5, 9. It was like 10 hours of circumambulation in that temperature of between -2 and 1, and icy, slippery stone. So it was, we ended up doing 5 2.5 hour sessions of circumambulation in that cold temperature. And so I did work with my dislike of cold weather and fear of cold weather. And what I was interested to observe was that, like, grumpiness or anger or ill will or dejection did not arise. So that's very interesting. If you were to ask me, did I enjoy the cold weather? Did I like it? Absolutely not. Did I get angry about it? Did I snap at people? Did I get grumpy? Did I get impatient? No. When we were walking pre-dawn, because dawn in Western China is 8 a.m. in winter, pre-dawn on an empty stomach, I had abdominal cramps and nausea. I felt like throwing up because it's not ideal to be exposed to sub-zero temperatures on a completely empty stomach. But I was okay. well, this is what was interesting to observe, is like, yeah, because I'm willing to be there, although the painful feelings were painful, the willingness to practice with them was there. Why? We're seeing the value in that. How are we going to develop equanimity if we don't try to do difficult things? How are we going to develop a capacity to be with pleasant, neutral, and unpleasant feelings mindfully if we're not willing to work with the unpleasant feelings for periods of time? As we all do in various ways. You all get experience of that when you do your 1 week or 10-day retreats. You get to work with the pain of sitting with a mind that's not yet perfectly trained, the pain of sitting with a body that has lots of aches and pains. And certainly I'm familiar with this concept and this practice. But sometimes we do it as like an intensive workshop. Do it a bit more, make it the focus for a period of time. And of course, another important factor is if you are going to undertake a journey like this is a wise spiritual companion. So my long-term student, Chai Ek, was a good companion to go with, because when I said, I'll do 108 circumambulations, he said, well, I'll do them too. So when you have someone who has a similar level of commitment, then you have the added benefit of camaraderie. You have a spiritual friend who's right there with you, and he doesn't like the cold either. So it was good. It was fortunate in having Chai Ek as my companion, because his fear of cold motivated him to get some pretty good gear. As you'll see when I share the pictures, I looked pretty dapper, pretty snazzy in my many layers of warm clothes. You had to wear merino wool underwear, and then cotton, and then fleece, and then a down jacket, and then a wind, like something that stops wind as well. I guess it's about 7 layers of clothing. I felt like a orange Michelin man. And, but anyway, so I will show you some pictures now. Shinxian. We have a picture of a Chai Ek's family, do we? Chai Ek and his lovely family, his wife Rachel, his 2 children, Kieran and Declan. This is at the Kuala Lumpur airport. I'm one of the family long pause, as you can see. Rachel was going to meet her sister, who lives in Sydney, in the city of Chongqing. And Chai Ek was accompanying them there, and then we would go off on our separate ways. It was a bit of a family reunion for Rachel's side of the family. So once we were in Chongqing, we took Chongqing is a city of, I think, 25 million people. Many of you will never even heard of this name, will you? Chongqing. Kind of slightly humorous to me as a white Australian, because as a little boy, we used to call Chinese people Ching Chongs. And now here I was going to a city called Chongqing. And it's full of Chinese people. You won't be surprised. And I have many Chinese people as my friends now, of course. Next picture. We took the road from Chongqing to another city, Chengdu. And on the way is a cave complex in a prefecture called Dasu, which had stone carvings. This image that you see behind me is an image of thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara. Can you expand a little bit, Shunxiang, so that you can see the Kuan Yin's face? And does it expand or not? So this statue is carved in stone, and there really are 1,000 hands. This is an image of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and the hands are a symbol of compassion. And if you touch twice, does it expand by itself, Shantin? Tap, tap. Mine does, but yours may not. Nope. Okay.
No, Ajahn. Mine is a laptop.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so this covers 88 square meters of wall space inside a cave. Doesn't quite capture the scale of it, but a very beautiful image and a lovely thing to consider. I did do some chanting there. I was the only one. Lots of people stared at me. Not that many Chinese people in China actually study Buddhism or have a Buddhist practice. Most of them, I guess, were tourists, but I was happy to chant there. Next picture, please. So this set of caves was apparently supervised the building. One monk supervised the building from the age of 19 to 89 in a time when people had a lifespan of 45 to 50. So this bhikkhu was obviously quite extraordinary. And apparently he had supervised 300 sculptors over a period of his life. And these caves did not receive imperial support. They had been built largely by the grassroots people in this area. Next picture, please. The colors that you see are what remains from, they were all painted. So the iron oxide, lapis lazuli, turquoise, mineral-based paints. So this was, I believe, pre-Tang, pre-Song dynasty. I can't remember exactly which dynasty, but it was 800 or 900 years ago. And it was 70 years in its construction. It had not been damaged by the Cultural Revolution. It was tucked away in the forest and somehow escaped. And it may also have been because it wasn't supported by wealthy elites. It was a grassroots temple. So it didn't somehow escape. And so it's nice to kind of walk into these places where centuries of devotion had occurred. And I think what you're looking at now is one of the cave had images of what they call the 8 great bodhisattvas in Mahayana Buddhism. And you see the qualities like compassion and purity and kindness on their faces. So nothing was added. This is pure extraction from a cliff face, making a cave and making statues, and then painting those statues. Next picture, please. Yes, and on the outside, there were all sorts of stories about morality tales and life lessons, and things about karmas and heavens and hells and things. So it was obviously a place that was used as a teaching medium, as well as a place of devotional practice. So that was about a 2.5-hour drive from Chongqing on our way to Chengdu. We spent a couple of hours there. There was another place nearby with sculptures from the Song dynasty, and those ones had been quite badly damaged. But even so, you could still feel a lot of faith and love and devotion. Okay, so the middle picture is me with all my gear, ready to go. This is Chaik and I at the bottom of the stairs, and we're like, oh my God, it's 1 degree. The path is covered in ice. Here we go. But we did. And this on the plants, on the trees, it looks like it's snow. It's not. It's the moisture that turned to ice. It was like, it's like, walking into a freezer, essentially. Those of you living in Europe, listening to me, you get the concept. You know what it's like walking around in a freezer in winter. So yes, up and up and up and up and up, and you can see there was like this many other people walking down. And to be fair, the steps are quite even and beautifully engineered. It's quite amazing, really, how much effort they put into making these beautiful staircases. And yes, we walked up and up and up. We caught a chairlift. The chairlift cut out about 2,000 steps, and then we walked. This middle picture. This is the stupa on top of the mountain, but it was so misty on this day. You really can't see much of it. Next picture. Okay, so this was quite magical. After we got up on the top and we did our first 27 circumambulations, I think. Then we checked into the hotel. There's one hotel on top of the mountain, and Chaik was able to book a room in that hotel. And that hotel is just 230 steps from the peak. So we were able to sleep there. I came out in the morning and I was surprised to discover that there had been a light snow. And many people have told me this. Many people have told me that if it actually snows, everything is better. The moisture's out of the air. You don't have that feeling of the damp like invading your bones. And there's this lovely quiet hush. And this was true. And this was the longest period of time I had spent walking around in snow. It was about -1. The nice thing about staying on top of the mountain in the one hotel is that when you go up there early in the morning, you basically get the place to yourself. And that's very special. So Samantabhadra Bodhisattva is often depicted riding an elephant. He has an elephant mount. And this image, this is a 660-ton bronze image. And underneath it is a stupa. There's like a chanting hall underneath it. I don't know how they got it up there because there's no road. So I don't know, but what I think they may have done is they may have taken up the various ores that you need to make bronze, and they may have poured it there in stages. That's and then sanded it down and finished it. That's what I think they did, because there's no road, and you can't, no matter how many helicopters you have, you can't carry 660 tons. So I'm assuming that they poured it in stages using the various ores that they needed. Quite an impressive and beautiful image. Samantabhadra is famous for his vows. After I show you these pictures, we might go over those vows. And so yes, as you can see, snow, ice, cold. And I worked with I sat, I did sit for 15 minutes. I said, okay, work with this, go and sit in the meditation hall. Ask permission to sit in the meditation hall. I lasted 15 minutes, but I sat in -1 and then went back and did another 9 circumambulations. Now, something really special happened that we weren't expecting to happen. This is very often the weather is like this. We went back, we had a little bit of breakfast and had a little nap. It turned out this is a New Year's Eve, and we had to move out of our hotel room and check into a different hotel room. So we had to leave our small backpack behind the reception for a couple of hours until the room became available, but that worked out fine. When we came out in the middle part of the day, next photo, please. Yes, that's how cold it is in the morning. We had this perfect blue sky. Look at this. And this was really magical. And you can show the next picture, Shenxian. This particular combination of snow on the ground, clouds completely filling the valley, and then a blue cloudless sky is apparently something that only occurs 20 days a year out of 360 plus days. So we were rewarded, I think, for our willingness to practice with a lot of unpleasant feelings. And it was really quite, yeah, it was magical. But keep in mind, it's still just 1 degree. Despite all that sun and blue sky, it is 1 degree. And I think you do you have the film part ready to go, Shenxia? Yeah, this one, yeah. Yeah. So you see the way the clouds completely fill, you're above the clouds, basically. And beautiful blue sky. So in terms of a spiritual metaphor, this is quite nice, isn't it? We want to get above the clouds. And the people who wrote the Dzogchen texts in Tibetan Buddhism, talking about the mind like being like the sky, thoughts being like clouds, and we want to make the mind like the sky, not grasping at the clouds. So experiencing kind of this kind of visage, it's a lovely memory, it's a lovely metaphor. So we were very blessed to be able to experience it. I knew it was special. It wasn't until the next day when we asked a couple of local guides. This was the mala that I was using to recite my mantras. It was amber. It feels less cold than other materials when you're meditating. I had these little gloves that had like the fingertips were exposed, and you could pull out your one thumb. And I would like do my mantras, walk around, and I'd do one round, and then I'd put my hand in my pocket, and I'd pull out the other hand and do another round, and alternating pockets because the fingertips were getting numb. But yes, it was very, very beautiful. This is a view on top of Ermaisan mountain on one of the 20 sunny days with clouds in the valley. So this was very magical. If you wanted to feel above it all. So, but this is later in the evening. The cold quickly returned, the blue sky disappeared, and this is me taking a selfie of, here I am in -2, walking circumambulations. I'm doing this. because it was New Year's Eve, there were extra candles lit. So there's around the base of the chedi there, there's a shelves where people can make their light offerings, and there's like what do you call them? Things to put a candle in, lanterns. Normally there'll be one lantern, but because it was New Year's Eve, there was 4 or 5 candles per lantern. So when they turned off the spotlights and closed the doors, and it was illuminated by this nice warmth, and that was comfort. As the ice turned to water, and the water, as the snow turned to water, and then in the evening the water turned to ice, we had to put on crampons. My first time in life experiencing having to have brass or bronze spikes on the bottom of my feet, which was then you're somewhere different when you have to put crampons on to do your evening meditation. This is not Thailand. So yes, and then we only had the next morning's 2 sessions of 9. So I came out the next morning and fulfilled my vow. Again, more abdominal cramps, more nausea. This is inside the chedi. Underneath, there's an image of Amitabha. Above the chedi, behind, there's a little image of Samantabhadra on his elephant. I did a little bit of retail therapy, or I gave myself a reward with Chai Ek's help. We got a lovely amber glass colored image of Samantabhadra, and I placed it on the shrine on that previous picture. I asked the monks permission to place it on the shrine and have it blessed. And this time I managed to sit for half an hour, and it was -2. So I realized that, one of my fears is that temperature of 1, 2, or 3 degrees and damp. This is like my nightmare, to have to be in that for hours. But I did do that. But then I found out that there's something worse than that. Something worse than that is -2 and raining. And I'd thought that go back, Xinxiang, go back to the bleak, misty scene. Yeah, okay, that one. I'd thought that 1, 2, or 3 was bad, and I'd actually thought that anything below 0 would have to be snow, but apparently not. It can rain in -2. So we had this experience of the little drops hurting as they hit your face, and the stone being ice. And anyway, it was only 2 hours, and I survived it. But as I said, I didn't get grumpy, I didn't get angry, I didn't blame anyone. I just kind of bore with painful feelings, unpleasant feelings, and finished my vow. And then we were able to go and have a nice, brunch and walk down the hill. The next day, so on the left there, that's what the staircase was like. We had to wear crampons all the way down the 1,000 steps because it was very slippery. And it was New Year's Day, so there were big crowds. And that was admirable. The number of Chinese people that came up that mountain in -2 on their New Year's Day was admirable. So we got down the mountain late afternoon, and I had a long hot bath, and I massaged my legs, and I got under the covers and spread loving kindness to myself and congratulated myself for surviving 2.5 days in freezing temperatures, fulfilling and I did do 20,000 mantras as well while I was up there. I did my 20,000 mantras related to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. There is another temple, not anywhere near as far up the mountain. This is where we're going on this day. So it turns out the chairlift was broken, but we met a guide who knew a back way, and we only had to climb about 500 or 600 steps. So this is how Ajahn is getting used to Chinese staircases when I say only 500 or 600 steps, because getting used to it now. On that day that we were up on top of the mountain, and we went up to do four sessions, that was 230 times 4. Yeah, so 1,000 steps up the first day, another 1,000 steps the second day, 1,000 steps down the third day, lots of steps. On this day was only about 600 or 700. And this temple is interesting. It's called the First Mountain. I don't know, but I suspect it may have been the first holy site to Samantabhadra before they developed the one on the highest peak. So those characters there say the First Mountain. when I walk into this place, I have an interesting feeling, almost like coming home. So I'm not making any claims, but I wouldn't be surprised if I may have spent a life, or at least part of a life, in this temple. I asked the monk, it does have a 900-year-old 15-ton bronze image of Samantabhadra, which also was not destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. I think it'd be quite hard to damage a 15-ton bronze image. And I think the next picture, yeah, so there's the elephant is bronze, the bodhisattva is bronze. We were lucky because the very next day they were closing this vihara and they were going to be renovating it for 6 months. So we had good timing that we were able to sneak a picture from a distance, offer our incense. I asked the monk, it's a very interesting experience. I asked the monk if I could meditate quietly to the side, and he gave this like 3-point coded answer, which I'm becoming familiar with now. He said, I can't give you permission to do that. First statement. Second statement, you could ask the administrative monk. He has the authority to give you permission. Second statement. Third statement, or you could just find somewhere quiet, either left or right, said in more quiet tone. That's the one that you listen to. Because I have experience in the past when another monk said a similar thing. I went and asked the administrative monk if I could meditate. He said, no. So now I know to just do it quietly. So the reason he has to say that, the Chinese Communist Party does not yet kind of support public, obviously it supports people coming to the temples, waving incense, paying respects, but it doesn't yet support the practice of meditation in a public way or in an organized way. So I have to be a little bit careful. And there are CCTV everywhere. So they allowed me into a little tea room to the side, which didn't have a camera, and I was able to sit inside the room, which was nice. And yeah, and I just felt very familiar there. In the afternoon, we went to another temple, we kind of went in a backwards order. There's one temple down in Ermaisan City, which is where where people would normally go when they begin their pilgrimage. But because of timing, it just worked out for us to kind of do it in reverse order. It was actually here where I was able to finish my mantras. It was about 5 or 6 degrees down in the valley, a little bit warmer. Yeah, so as you can see, very nicely kept, very nicely renovated, very beautiful images. So in terms of, it's an interesting thing to observe in China. Literally billions of dollars have been spent on renovating, preserving Buddhist holy sites. So it gives me some hope. It gives me some hope that all that needs to change really is for the upper level echelons of the government to decide that Dharma can be taught and people can meditate, and these places become a real resource. So we'll see. So the mantra I was doing, because we were in Samantabhadra's mountain, was Namo Pusian Pusa, which is the Mandarin for homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. I did 10,000 of those. And the other one is Om Vajrasattva Hum, because Samantabhadra is also considered to be Vajrasattva by the Tibetan practitioners. So I'm going to read his vows now, just so we get some idea for the... Again, my main practice is Theravada, but I do Devanusati, and I would consider a celestial bodhisattva to be one of the most developed, most beautiful, most altruistic of devas. So meditating upon his qualities is a beautiful exercise in, expanding one's consciousness, considering what's possible, and just appreciating that a few beings do cultivate in this way, similar to Avalokiteshvara Siddhikava Manjushri. So his first vow, Samantabhadra, is to pay homage to all Buddhas. So some of these don't seem particularly difficult. As Buddhists who love the Buddha, when we think of paying homage to the Buddhas, that's like, wow, great, wonderful. I love to pay respects to the Buddhas too. to glorify the qualities of the Tathagatas, praise them, celebrate them. Okay, that sounds fun. To make ample offerings to all the Buddhas. So yes, who wouldn't like to be able to make lots of offerings to the Buddhas? But this is what we need to notice here, is to make ample offerings to all the Buddhas. This is where it gets interesting. That seems to suggest that Samantabhadra has been around for a long time and intends to be around for a long time if he's going to be making offerings to all Buddhas. Vow number 4 is interesting: to confess and repent all of one's misdeeds. An interesting aspect of practice. One doesn't bring self-loathing, self-aversion, self-flagellation to this practice, but this is a practice of honestly acknowledging and accepting the things that we did that were wrong or unskillful. And then giving rise to a feeling of regret, really wishing that one hadn't done that. And then setting the intention not to do it again. So this is important no matter what type of Buddhist you are, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana. We all need to do this. We all need to be able to look at our deeds, which are wholesome, which are neutral, which are unwholesome. What have I done that was unskillful? Acknowledge that and feel appropriate remorse, which is not self-hatred. It's a healthy emotion, actually. And we feel it so that we inform consciousness that when we do this kind of thing, we don't feel good. And then we set the intention to try not to do it again. It's a very important part of the process. If we don't acknowledge the fault, we don't feel the remorse, it's difficult to find the resolve not to do it. And then it can become a bit of a blind spot. 5th also kind of sounds nice, but it's not necessarily that easy. Vow number 5, to rejoice in the merits of all others. So, mudita, brahmavihara, it's easy to rejoice in the merits of people you like. Suppose there might be a person you feel a bit competitive with or envious of, jealous of. It's not as easy to have mudita for their merits. So again, that word, rejoice in the merits of others, it's all others. To always request the preaching of the Dhamma, vow number 6. Vow number 7, to entreat enlightened beings to remain in the world. Vow number 8, to always study the teachings of the Buddha. So you get the sense that Samantabhadra has been around for millions of lives and is going to be around for millions more. That's why he can use words like always request. So there are different types of bodhisattvas apparently. You have the bodhisattva who has a prediction of becoming a teaching Buddha, but then you have these celestial bodhisattvas who are like the epitome of altruism. Apparently they refuse to take the prediction of Buddhahood. They're just committed to sticking around to help others as long as possible. I'm not recommending it, but I am holding it up as an interesting example of the opposite of impatience. The opposite of greed is the however long it takes. And making the needs of others the priority. Just the fact that there is such a being who thinks in this way, lives in this way, practices in this way, it can gladden the heart when we think of it. To always study the teachings of the Buddha. Number 9, to always respond to sentient beings according to their various needs. So a vow to help whatever being one can, if one is able, by giving them what they need. Dana, metta, renunciation, determination, patience. Trying to help beings is not easy. Beings tend to be stubborn. Beings are not always easy to help. You might have noticed. So that a person has a vow to help all beings according to what they need. Vow number 10, to dedicate all merits to sentient beings that they may achieve Buddhahood. Again, an interesting vow. We might dedicate merit that beings be liberated from suffering, to become arhants as quickly as possible. Samantabhadra makes the vow that all beings become Buddhas, obviously with the intention that if they did, there would be a lot of people with a lot of compassion helping a lot of people. So just those are his vows, which we share. It's one example of Devanusati, of a very kind and altruistic, boundlessly compassionate bodhisattva practitioner. So in the Theravada, we have Maitreya, of course. Maitreya Bodhisattva. Now he's a bodhisattva. In about 300 million years, apparently, he will become a teaching Buddha in this universe, and he will be the Buddha who has the most loving kindness of any Buddha thus come, apparently. So he, of course, is another example of a extraordinarily altruistic, kind, patient being who has been spending millions and millions, possibly billions of lives cultivating for the sake of benefiting others. Those of you who don't become arahants this lifetime, many of us have the wish to meet Maitreya and rejoice in his metta, experience his metta. So that was my most recent pilgrimage to China. It was just a 5-day, 4 days on San and a last day in the city of Chengdu. So this was where I finished my mantras, in this hall, in this temple, finished my mantras there. The thing about forcing oneself to do a lot of mantras, again, it means you can't be thinking about other things. You have to focus on that mantra. And I did find that I came back to Thailand and I didn't feel particularly tired, even despite climbing all the steps and the cold. And I did find the mind was energized. After a couple of days, I realized my body was fighting a bug, probably picked up something, a bit of a blocked nose and some mucus in the chest, which is probably somewhat inevitable, hanging out outdoors in sub-zero temperatures and in crowds. But otherwise, I found it quite energizing. And so I will be leading a group in May, a small group, to 3 of the holy mountains. I actually got it right in my head now because I have this tendency to like to count things. I've decided that I will try to go to the 4 holy mountains 3 times each. So I'm already halfway there. Actually, that's part of the reason I decided to do it. I've done half of it, so might follow through. This was in that temple. We were paying respects on the last day. This was interesting because I believe this was the seven Buddhas as we have them in our suttas: Siki, Wesabu, Konagamana Kasaba, Gautama, Konagamana Kasaba, Konagamana Kakosanda, Sa Kasaba, Gautama, Maitya, Siki, and Wesabu as well. So they also do study some Theravada scriptures. Jake and I, and our last day in San. So yes, we can take, if we're fortunate, we can take periods in our lives for more focused practice. Sometimes, stretching our imagination, expanding consciousness to consider, the epitome of altruism is helpful because we all have our limit of how much we feel we're willing to be generous, or how much we feel we're willing to be helpful, how much we're willing to practice patience. And we all have those difficult people in our lives due to karma. And then when you have the examples of beings like the celestial bodhisattvas that who have their own mountains, they have mountains of merit, so they get mountains dedicated to them. And just consider their example. It can help us stretch our capacities. It's like, okay, well, if Samantabhadra is willing to dedicate merits to all beings and fulfill their needs in whatever way he can for endless lifetimes, maybe I can be a little bit more generous. Maybe I can be a little bit more forgiving. Maybe I can be a little bit more patient. Maybe I can practice with a little bit more painful, chafing feelings in my own efforts. Yeah, it's nice to get out of one's comfort zone and look at some vast vistas and consider these things, expand consciousness, and come back to one's ordinary life. And that this is one of the benefits of pilgrimages, that when you are away from your life, you can look back and think, okay, what would I like to do more of? What would I like to do less of? What's lacking in my practice? What could I benefit from? So I usually do that as well. Make some aspirations, some focus. I did make one vow for this year. I'm already committed to lots of practices, so I didn't have to make that much more commitments to my practice. But my New Year's resolution was I'm going to lose 5 kilograms of weight. So my middle age spread is not in accordance with the middle way. And I want to support my knees in supporting me. So I'm going to drop some weight. Wish me luck. So I hope something I said in my meandering contemplation was of some use to you. Wherever you are in your practice, may you be diligent. May you practice as much as you can while you have the opportunity, and just do a little bit more this year than you did last year, if you can, and keep up that determination year after year. So, dedicate the merits of my pilgrimage with you on all beings karmically connected to me. May you grow in Buddha Dhamma and achieve the kind of liberation that you aspire to in a timely fashion.
Sadhu. Thank you so much, Ajahn, for the very inspiring sharing.
You're welcome. If no one else wants to go with me to Omai-san, I think your number's up, Shenxian, for that third time. You're going to take me, aren't you? No one else does?
I hope so.
Sadhu, depending on conditions. Should we share some merit? Dedicate some merit? Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.
Thank you so much, Ajahn.
My pleasure.
Can we invite everyone to pay our respects together? Bow. We bow together. Bow.
Tahun dan istrinya 4 tahun ditemui di dalam bilik tidur kediaman mereka di Taman Mutiara. Difahami Maus bertugas sebagai besar.
Who's speaking Chinese in the background?
Kali istrinya seorang
Take care, Ajahn.
Okay,
Take care,
so
Jan.
if you
Safe
don't
travels.
you don't have the chance to go to holy places, you need to make the place where you are holy, okay?
Safe travels, Ajahn.
Thank you,
Next
Ajahn.
time.
Ajahn.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Ajahn.
Thank you, Sosiang.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Sosiang.
Good night, Susiang.
But it's stupid. Cycling is so stupid. The weekend is so